Welcome to Translating Features Shipped into Business Impact. My name is Brennan Collins. I'll be taking you through this lesson. This is the third in a series called From Feature Manager to Product Leader. So if you haven't seen the first two, we do talk about handling stakeholders, converting something into strategy if you were given a roadmap, and then now, lastly, how do we really connect the things we do to the impact that matters? I do like to remind everybody as we start that I have a large screen and I keep your faces up on one side so that I can also see the content and engage with you. And that's typically how I teach my classes too, to make sure that we're in a small group and we're learning from each other right away. So let's get into today's topic. Where I want to start is in the chat. If you want, go ahead and put something that you've built recently that you're proud of. We all work on products and we come up with some new features. I bet a lot are AI oriented, but then I'm going to have a question for you afterwards about some of the things you built. And really, it's a question for you to answer as we go through today's lesson. So if you made a chatbot, a dashboard, some sort of workflow efficiency, anything like that as you're going through, think about what it is that you've been building recently that you're proud of. And then I want you to ask yourself, can you put a dollar figure on it? Because that's where we need to end up. Now, there's something in the middle, though, that we're going to talk about that's missing between that. So when I want to tell you about a little story way back when I started as an early product manager, it was at a great company called MedAssets in healthcare. They had a very thorough process to their product management approach. So we would do this annual budget planning sessions. And I don't know if any of you have gone through these kinds of things before, but they last almost the whole year. And then by the time you're done, you have to start over again. So it ends up being quite a huge process, and it feels like a big distraction from what we're doing at the time. It also feels like it's a big risk because what we're doing is we're in the middle of a year. We have a plan for the rest of the year, so 6 months from now of all these features we're building, and then we have to take a guess at another 12 months worth of features and then put that out on a roadmap and say, hey, here's what it is that I want budget for, and really how many engineers, how many designers, how many data scientists, that kind of thing that we need to be able to do that. Also, then related to sales and customer support and all the other operations that go into it. So we were constantly doing this, and yet what we found was that the features were not actually what mattered at all. There are four questions that they cared about most. Can you win new logos? So new sales, of course. Are you going to win any new sales from the things you want to build, from this budget we give you? Can you sell more to the base of existing customers that we already have? Can you get them to pay more potentially? Maybe by upselling them on new offerings or increasing price. Or maybe we decrease our costs so we can increase our margin either way. I want to make sure that we're growing this over time and we can justify the price increases. And then lastly, can you keep them from leaving? When you look at attrition, retention, churn, any of the words associated with keeping your customers there. What we found was that it was that if you could bring in a feature plan, but if that's all you had and you didn't have answers to these questions, you were going to get roasted by the leadership. So we're presenting to the COO, the president, and of course the CFO is looking for answers to these questions. And now the first time I went through it, fortunately, my boss, who was the VP at the time, was like, hey, we've got to make sure we're covered on this. The features don't actually matter at all. And that was the funny part. Like, wait, what do you mean? Don't people have opinions on that? Well, so the way it worked was we took a number that looked like it was desirable enough for the executives to say, okay, that's enough growth from last year. Let's say we made 10 million on that product or 30 or 40 million on that product last year. Is 5% growth enough? Is 10% growth enough? Or maybe we point out, hey, we've got a retention problem, or we think that there's an upsell opportunity. Let's start with those numbers. And then we're like, okay, so what do we do to back into then the features to get us to those numbers? And we're like, okay, well, this is actually a good thing in that we have features finally connected to goals, business results, instead of just adoption, engagement, those kinds of things. All right, so there was a positive here for sure. Now, it shouldn't have taken us 6 months to try to get to it, but that's the way it works. So there's a positive, there's a connection, but the issue was somewhere in the middle, we're missing something entirely. We're missing the logical reasoning between why that feature earns us the new sales, earns us the retention, earns us the right to sell more, to our existing customers. And it's really the value that our customers bring. And so when I reflected back on this process, I actually went through some of the old documents that I had, and I was like, there is nothing in here associated with the customer's value as to why we even deserve the new sales that we get. Why do we deserve people to leave a competitor and come to us? Why do we deserve that they would pay us more money and we're going to increase the pricing? So while they cared about the features, they skipped everything that was happening that actually connected the features to the real numbers in the end. And that's what we need to make sure we cover today. Yes, you need to make sure you cover revenue. You need to cover retention. You need to cover costs. And frankly, most product managers I talk to miss these things altogether. They stop too short as they move up the ladder to try to get to those kinds of outcomes. So it's great that you have those thinking. But when you don't have the connection to your customers, and then especially from your customers then to these business outcomes, these features look like risks more so than anything, and they become debatable. So if I cannot show the connection between this set of features and the revenue figures that I want to get to, well, then it's all up for interpretation and debate. And if my stakeholders have more authority than I do, positional power than I do, which we've covered in the previous lessons, then you know who's going to win the debate about which feature ends up getting built. It ends up being the stakeholders, the highest paid people in the room, those kinds of things that have their opinions that matter from their experience. So when we have just ideas and we think that it might connect to revenue, we need to make sure that we've got the connection locked down because a feature ends up being what you build, but the value to your customer and to your business is what is actually changing in their lives or in their companies. So what we need to make sure you're doing is climbing the ladder from feature to value. So let me show you how to do that and what it looks like. We're going to start at the bottom and we're going to climb a ladder. Literally, it has two rungs here. The ladder starts on the foundation of a persona. Who's our customer? That matters. And yes, you can have multiple ladders, but let's just picture one at a time. We've got one persona with a particular pain that is worth paying for. All the strategic things go into that of like, is this desirable? Is it feasible? Is it viable? All that elements of research you have to do. Great. And so from there, you might have features. Maybe you have features given to you. I'm trying to use your existing roadmap that's already there. Best practice is you actually start from the top and move down, but that's not the way it works. Usually it starts with, hey, we've already got features. We've already got kind of some personas in mind. So let's talk about the feature. Well, the feature is intended to affect a user's task. So if we say we're going to add AI, automation, something else, reduce clicks here, it's to help a user as part of the journey inside our product to shorten the time it takes or increase the pleasure, reduce the pain, just of that micro task that they're trying to do at that time, right? We stack features to then create a whole bunch of value, but each individual one should have some purpose. It's supposed to help a user in some way. Well, that user wasn't hired to use your product at their company. So let's say B2B. We have people that have been hired into a company. They use your product to help their job get done. Their purpose isn't to use the product. Their purpose is to get the job done that their job requirements dictate. And they're paid a salary to do so in the hopes that their job produces their own ROI. So what we need to do is help that user with a small task, which then helps them with a bigger job to be done or their whole journey. And then that completion of their journey in a better way, maybe more value there. They could do more than they could before. They could do it faster. They could affect more, or they have lower costs themselves. That affects then their company. And then the buyer persona at that point in time, it leads to the customer success. So there's layers in here. If you're doing B2B or B2C, you might have different rungs that are in there. But that's okay. You can have as many rungs on this ladder. But the point is, can you connect it to the value for them? And then also connect it back to the value for us? You need both of those things. Because what happens is if you have just one side of the ladder, let's say you have the business pole only. This is what we were doing in MedAssets. We went from feature all the way up to things that we wanted. Our selfish ambitions of like, we want more users, we want more usage, we want more revenue, and we want people to stay. Those are all things that we want, right? And so that's a single pole or just a stick that will fall over as soon as you try to climb that ladder. But if you think about then the customer pole only, some product managers maybe if they came from a design background, especially, they want to say that they're customer centric. And it is fantastic because a lot of times we get too sucked into our selfish desires of our company. So customer centric product managers, though, they might miss the business side entirely. They say, hey, it helps our customer, helps our customer, helps our customer. Great. But can they go and have that conversation back with the CFO like I was doing, the president, the COO, the operations? Like, how do we make justifications for the cost of actually investing in this? Just because there is a pain problem in our user experience doesn't mean it's worth solving. If it only helps like one person in a small way, yeah, that could maybe help everybody eventually, but we've got to be pragmatic with our decisions too. So we need the combination of both things together. That's the pragmatist that the product manager brings in. We have to have our designers, creatives, researchers find every possible friction point, our engineers even, to make things better for our customer. And we need to make sure that the finance side of it all works together at the same time. And we blend those together to make good decisions. And that's what product management is really about, is making good decisions. Now, there's a lot more to it than this, but this is a good framework to where you can then speak to anyone about the value of anything on your roadmap. So let's look at one example with real things filled in here. It's still a hypothetical example, but it's from one of my students, or a group of students was at a payments platform. And so they were a platform team within a very large digital payments kind of product. And so they were focusing on financially stressed cardholders that were having late fees happen a lot. And so these cardholders didn't want late fees anymore. And so they were thinking of different features that might help them with this problem. And so they were like, hey, what about AI? It's always the first thing that people jump to these days. So they're like, well, what if we had an AI chat bot that helped with users with answering questions? So they could ask questions about why, what the issue is and solve it before they end up with a late fee. They could ask for that help there. Okay, so we've got an LLM built into it. Sounds great, right? But you don't want to stop there. You're like, well, what is the real benefit here to then the users, right? What do they get out of it? How would I quantify success? Is it through usage of this, like the chat adoption? No, it should really be about that their questions get solved in seconds rather than potentially days. So if we look at it, we need a metric. That's what this product metrics ladder is about, is measurement at each level. We need a metric that shows what the support costs or time waiting was before. So you submit a ticket, it moves on, you got now a response. It could be days. Now, can we change that from days to minutes, or even less potentially? And then that's the gap and value that we're going to be creating. So we can see that on the customer side. They have reduced waiting. How can we measure then effectiveness on our side too? Is there something that's positive for us at that point in time? Is that the deflection from going to our support team to self-service, things are resolved without a ticket. Hey, there's a positive for us operationally at the same time. So when we see that happen, we can also see something on our side. And then what do the customers get out of it? So they're not using the help feature just to use the help feature, right? So we don't want to stop there, right? That's a micro task in a bigger journey. And so the journey is really about, they have a job of trying to avoid a late fee because they've had it before, and they're trying to protect their credit score, make sure that that doesn't hit. So if they can resolve their questions, we believe that it'll lead to the avoidance of late fees. And then also, if we see that more people are going to this while they're avoiding their late fees, they're also reducing total ticket volume, and our support costs go down. And we can keep going up the ladder as many times as we want to try to get to higher level goals too. So, what is the emotional value that goes to someone that now feels like they're avoiding late fees, their credit is secure, they feel like they're in control of their money, they have less anxiety about their finances. So, you might even have a an emotional goal that isn't quite like quantitatively measured, but you can still assess it subjectively. So you can see all these things can continue to stack, and then you've got a goal around around our business side is the people that use our product that end up feeling more secure and less anxious about their money are going to stay with us. So while this started as a nice to have chat feature where I can use AI, it is now turned into a retention feature. And if I go to my CFO and say, hey, we can keep more clients, we can keep more customers, we can keep happier customers, and we can do so by doing it this way, and at the same time reduce support costs. So the benefit here is that you can then talk to people at pretty much any level wherever they have this conversation and be able to point to the logic on what it does for our customer and then what it does for us. The way I like to turn it into a sentence is using a Mad Lib format. I use a lot of Mad Libs to make the process easy, but you don't have to follow the exact words. But the way it goes is you start at the bottom of the ladder is really the first part of the Mad Lib here. So we believe, everything's a hypothesis, we believe that if we gave persona, let's say new mid-market teams, this is another example, new mid-market teams, a guided first week setup, so we're improving the onboarding here, then they could reach their first value faster, and then the win that they get, the win that they signed up for, the promise that we made in our marketing. And if we help them get their win faster, then that improves their success with our product. And then that earns us more retention, retained money there. And so if you can actually quantify the churn, you can quantify the formula for retention and value. Now you can say, I'm asking for $200,000 to be able to build out this type of feature set, and we believe it will result in $1.2 million. Now, if you just had that point, and a lot of product managers do that, they're like, here's the feature idea, here's the cost, here's what we think the benefit is. There's a lot of speculation in between. So having this Mad Lib that says, well, we believe that if we did this, then we're going to see this result, and here's why, it's a lot easier to explain. The other thing might be that you could start from a different direction. And so if an executive says, well, what are you doing about customer retention? You just start the Mad Lib in a different spot. You say, oh, well, we think there's an opportunity to save 15%, reduce churn by 15%, and that'll save us $1.2 million in lost customers. And we believe we're going to be able to do that by targeting mid-market teams that are struggling with their first week setup. Today, they're, whatever the problem is, and tomorrow we think we can help them reach that value faster, and they get what they signed up for, and they have more success in the product. And so therefore then we'll see that increased retention. So you can use this Mad Lib format to just jump in wherever there might be a question. Why is that feature here? Well, this is why. What are we doing about this business goal? Well, here's what it is. What do I do about that customer need that I happen to hear in a sales conversation recently? Here's then the middle part where we can then talk about the benefits and the features that we're going to be building to address that. So this is really versatile. It also, in essence, gives you strategic thinking. Strategic thinking is really why this and why now? We talked about this in the last lesson as well. Can you answer those questions? If you can make justification for everything on your roadmap and then also hold truths together. So why this feature? And then if I compare this new feature in here, I can then juggle them and make a decision as to which one's a better priority because I have this whole set of justifications, customer value, business value, and the potential solution that's going to help them. I also name a specific persona with a specific problem all together in one format. So when you think about these, that was one ladder for one persona and problem area for one business goal maybe. You can also start to stack these. So let's say you're not a product manager anymore. So I coach all kinds of people. I had a director in one of my recent classes, and I've got a senior director. I talk to VPs occasionally as well. How do you build this out now to where you've got a stacking type of strategy too, your whole portfolio? So your VP might cover the entire company. Let's say there's one VP of product in the company. So they want to make sure that customers are thriving across the whole suite of products that you have. And then that also helps your enterprise value grow consistently. Well, what must be true for that to happen? You've got two different portfolios of products maybe. So you've got one portfolio focused on retention, and you've got one other portfolio of products and product teams focused on winning new markets. So maybe that's the business outcome directive that they're getting. So let's separate that down. So how would we go about retaining customers or winning new customers? Well, then I'm going to have a product manager focused on problems that we think If we solved, will lead to more retention. And so then within the payments app, we're seeing retention issues. Within the analytics suite, we're seeing retention issues. And then within new markets, we think that if we solve for onboarding, that'll keep more of these new customers around in that freemium model that we have. And then in the insights, then they get more value and they stay as well. So we can think about organizing all of our product teams, all of our roadmaps under the same kind of principle, in that every level should still be able to say, what do my customers get out of it? Why are we investing here? If we invested this much, let's say this whole portfolio has a cost. But if I can't tell you what my customers are going to get out of it, nor what my company is going to get out of it, if I'm missing one of those, then I really don't have good justification for everything, too. So you can think about the same ladder concept all the way through the whole organization, creating a pyramid. And so when you start doing this, you're not asking for spend anymore. I was begging for dollars because that was how you had kind of power in the organization, was the bigger your budget. So I wanted a bigger budget. At least that's what my boss told me to do. And that's how it's always been done in that company. But so I was asking to say, I want to build these features. Here's how much it costs. And I'm kind of making up whether those numbers are going to be hittable or not. And so now what I can do is to say, I can logically lead to this return because I can say we're creating this much value for customers that might be 10 times more than what we even expect to get out of it. So a conservative estimate. And the cost of us building this out is a ratio less than that too. So now I can say the cost isn't really the problem here. It's how much value can we create for customers to be able to earn the outcomes, the revenue that we're looking for. So I can start showing them what that return on the investment really is. Now, when I speak to most product managers, this part of my course around product metrics is really where a lot of them get stuck. And so if it's happening to you, if you're thinking about this at the same time, to where you might have engagement numbers, adoption numbers, activation numbers, but you don't necessarily have that customer outcome and a business result, is really common. I will take a small aside is I really hate the term engagement because it is one esoteric. The formula doesn't matter. And oftentimes it's a vanity metric to make us sound good, but then has no connection to either the customer nor our business. So if you're using engagement numbers and not doing the connection, that's a big problem too. And if you continue to do so, it's actually a credibility killer too, because people see that you're not ready for leadership because you're not thinking about the business metrics. At the same time, you can't articulate in a customer value perspective why any of this matters. So missing the connection ends up being a really big risk for you too. So Anna has a question. Let's see. How about measuring business impact from improved internal processes? For example, revamping postmortems so that takeaways would persist instead of being lost into the ether repeating mistakes. Great example. Lots of products are internal. Maybe they're platform. They have a focus, they have a market, they have customers as well. Your customers might actually just be inside your own business. And so then the value there gets not quite duplicated, but it is way more in line. And so this process, I think, is even more impactful because it's clearer to people that if we're able to, let's say, support 10 different teams with better processes, we should be able to say this feature makes this one task more efficient. Maybe it's taking something from your postmortem and to say, hey, we're going to do this in a repeat manner with a template, a process standardization. We should, and the best teams that do it, they do it in 3 days instead of 2 weeks, whatever. I'm making up something, right? So we should see the reduction from 2 weeks to 3 days times the number of times that task happens. Maybe it's once a sprint. So then we're looking at what, 25 a year times the number of teams that we have. And all of a sudden we can start calculating the value of that to say, okay, that's and this many hours saved over the year times the resource rate of how much that person costs. And all of a sudden now we've got a number for our operations and CFO that says, hey, your budget gets saved by this much, or the opportunity cost is not there anymore. You can go and spend that time on something else. Ethan says, are there better approaches to bring up valid issues with leadership, especially as a volunteer? That sounds like a very particular issue to you. It sounds a little personal. So I do consulting quite a bit, and so it can be difficult to bring up hot topics. Sometimes as a volunteer or an outsider, it's a little bit easier because you're not part of the family per se, and you have not necessarily a skin in the game like everybody else to be defensive about. So it could be easier. But what I like to do is, if you remember one of the earlier classes on the stakeholder judo, to where what we're doing is we're asking them questions to exhaust them first. So we want to make sure that we're pulling out any emotion around what they're thinking. So if it's related to a ladder here, hey, what are you hoping for as far as business goals? What do you think that, our customers need to get out of it in order for us to deserve those business goals? And so then what do we think that ideas are that we can help those customers with, features and problem areas? And then once they exhaust them, then you can just show them, hey, here's something that I've been putting together. I heard some of that, did some research, and I think maybe there's something, a gap right here. What do you think if we did something like this? And so you still ask them for their advice while showing them the issue that's there. And so it's not as combative at that point in time. Now you need to have done your research and preparation to build out your ladder or create your Mad Lib around hypotheses, those kinds of things, your user journey map. So you can do those kinds of things to help create it. And yes, you want to make it a safe space for them to also admit maybe that they might be wrong. All right, so think about your examples. So, Anna, you brought up a good one. Thank you for that. What are some others? Have you ever gotten stuck on a feature that just is like, okay, I feel like this is a good one. People agreed like it's a good feature, but I'm having a hard time with a connection, and we could actually go through one of those live, one and two, three, however we might have, and climb the rungs hypothetically like we just did with that one. So if you want to come off mute and share one of yours, you can do that or put it into the chat as well. And then a question for Anna. Did that cover what you were thinking with your question there?
Yes, I think so. It's a little bit I'm a little unsure how to quantify the things that you were listing, which are absolutely relevant to my situation. It's maybe just going to take some more thinking.
Yeah. If you want to chat, you can email me. We could talk it through as well, and I could help you do one of those things. So I teach product metrics a lot because I like to think in math, and that helps me with that. But I understand that that's not a typical thing for a lot of different personality types. So I might be able to see that a little bit differently than you, and show you maybe some quick tricks as to how to get to that formula.
Fabulous. Thank you. I'll follow up.
Okay. Yeah, you can just reply to any of the emails that go out from Maven too. They go directly to me. Okay. Any other ideas? Anything you want to chat through? I'll give you some time to consider thinking about it too. Now, if you want to take this further, just remember that you can have four rungs, and you can start from the top or the bottom either way. So if you remember these four, you pretty much have it covered. You can have five, six, seven, eight rungs because it's really an if-then statement. If we did this for these people, we think we should see this result. And if we see this result, then we'll see this thing change. If we see this, we'll see this thing change. So you can have a lot more rungs, but to keep it simple, you've got your feature, you've got your product metric, that helps your user, not yourself. You have your customer value that comes from doing that for all customers. And then you have the business result, which is what you've earned by doing that for your customers as well. So you have to justify why you even deserve the revenue, the dollars, the things like that you're going to be getting along the way too, because customers still make a choice. Now, in Anna's case, maybe they don't because they're internal customers and they're forced to use your product. But still, you want to create some value for them as well. So if this is interesting to you, here's an example. Here's what we shipped. Here's the user behavior it changed. Here's what it did for our customers' benefit. Here's what that earned our business in dollars. And this is just a slice of things that we talk about in the Influential PM. Module number 3 is probably my favorite that covers this and goes deeper into those examples to where we work through things like Anna's example live, and then you take that back. Everything is built into your actual roadmap for your product, and your actual work is what we work on as far as artifacts go, so that you're ready to go and you get a lot more to it than just this brief presentation. So if you're interested in that course, I do have one starting on Monday. It happens to be more of a US evening course. So I'm offering that. A few people asked me to said, hey, I can't make classes during the day. Could we do something in the evening? And so we've got that one Wednesday, Friday at like 5 o'clock Central. So join that one if you want. If you're interested in one of the other ones, let me know kind of what times work for you. And I'm trying to schedule my fall and winter times right now too. So let me know. Glad to see everybody here yet again. Many repeat repeat students here. So great to see you. Thanks for the engagement.
Thanks for the session,
And
Brennan.
if you
Yeah.
got any other questions, you could email me.